Whoa, I didn't know you could do it right from here.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool.
Hello, I am Heather Doyle Fraser, and I have someone special with me today.
Hello. Apparently I'm using a weird voice today.
Do you want to introduce yourself, Bay?
Sure. I am Bay LeBlanc Quiney, and I don't know what else to say. What else should I say?
Um,
Well, I should explain that the
mhm.
exotic accent that you're hearing is Canadian. So
You
I
are
know it's really
so,
sexy accent.
you're so exotic.
Yeah, so exotic. Uh-huh.
And you're a coach.
I am a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I am an executive leadership coach.
Mm-hmm.
I live in Victoria, British Columbia, and I'm also a writer.
Yes, you are. And that's why we're here today, isn't
So
it?
convenient. What a coincidence.
As you can see, Bay and I are comfortable with each other.
We go back a ways.
Yeah. Um, so today I just wanted to get on with you today and talk about book writing and book writing process. And, I'm doing this writing your book course. It's a 6-week course that's coming up in October. And I've taken what I do one-on-one with people like you, and I have put it into a course, a 6-week course. All the not everything I do with you, but like all the foundational stuff that we did at the beginning of our
Yeah.
process, and come back to again and again and again. That's what that course is. So I wanted to talk with you a little bit to see how that process has helped you, and just to kind of give people an idea what it's like even.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I'll just say that you're like a saint because your ability to be patient when we have to come back over and over and over again to the same place. You're like, I feel like I've said that before. I'm like, no, this is 100% the first time I've heard it.
Now, that's not what I was meaning. I was meaning more like these foundational practices serve you like throughout your whole
But
process.
but that's what I mean,
Yeah.
right? Like, is like you like it would be easy to do it once or probably never at all. I think most writers probably just try never to do it at all, right? And then they just,
Yeah.
it's like I'm going to read the Bible from Genesis to whatever the last book of Revelation, I think, whatever's the last one. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's actually not the way to do it. That's
Right.
not probably the way to win at this game. And so, like, those initial pieces, which feel like
Slow down.
yeah, like
Mhm.
almost like a detour because you're like, no, I want to write this book. And sort of like slow down and do that actually ends up providing you like the roadmap for the path ahead.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, just so everyone here watching isn't confused about what that is, I'll tell a little bit about that. We start with why, and that's always a good place to start, no matter what you're doing, but particularly when you're writing a book, because it's that gift that you can give yourself now in the present moment that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
Because when you're really clear, then you have a place to come back to when it gets a little messy, when it gets a little mucky, when it gets uncomfortable, when it gets vulnerable. You're reminded, and that work we do together isn't just like, hey, let's think about this. It's, hey, let's think about this. Hey, let's write about this. Hey, let's talk about this, and let's
Yeah.
come back to it again and again.
Yeah. Well, and the other apart from all of those sticky places that I mean, I can presume all writers get to, certainly myself, is like also just when you just feel like you don't want to do it anymore.
Right.
And it might be vulnerable. It might be all those things. You might also just be bored or
Right.
just burnt out or,
It's
tired of it.
tedious. Yeah.
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 Like that's the part
Mm-hmm.
no one really talks about. Like all these people who are like, oh yeah, like I wrote a book. It took me 3 months. I'm like, no, you didn't.
No, that book was in your heart and mind for like 3 years before it even got onto
And
the page.
regardless, like
Yeah.
that's a pamphlet. Come on.
Well, and to be fair, like with this 6-week course, you're not going to write a book in 6 weeks. That's not what this course is. It's you're going to have the foundation set. You're going to have your daily writing practice set.
Right.
If you follow what I'm asking you to do, you'll have that, your brilliant best friend, you know what I'm going to say it is, Bae, right? Your book plan.
I was like, is it outline?
Yep. Yep. So you're going to have that at the end of the 6 weeks. You're going to be really clear on who your audience is and who you need to be and what you need to set up in your life in order to write this book.
Right.
And the why, and you know, they're just the compassionate practices that you need to layer on in your life to help you get through not only that first 6 weeks, but the next 6 months or 9 months or 12 months, however long it takes. So.
Well, and like really that, like, it's like creating that launch pad, right? And then ideally that chunk of time is enough that you can sort of shift whatever habits need to be shifted so that you can create a habit of writing. Because it wouldn't, I mean, I could see, I mean, there's lots and lots of people who have a book they want to write, but it could even just be someone who really wants to get into the habit of journaling or
starting
keeping a
their
diary.
blog. Yeah, starting
anything
their blog.
like, yeah. And so just really getting into the habit of writing, and doing so with the support of like, hey, here are some things that are like tried and true. They will help you to do this, instead of, you know, it's kind of like getting somebody who gives you like, oh, I made too much sourdough starter. You can have this. And you're like, good, because the steps involved in creating it might not be that hard, but it seems overwhelming to me and I'm just never going to do it.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So it's not that I couldn't do it. It's just that I'm not going to do it. Whereas if someone kind of gives you that step up, you're like, okay, well, I could probably manage this from here. And so those processes end up being, or processes for American translation, end up being, I think, a huge value. Like, we did them. I didn't want to do them because I was like, no, Heather, I already know. I've been working on this for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know it all.
And what happened?
Oh, we spent a long time not writing my book because I wouldn't do the like exercises, and then I finally did it, and that helped clarify a lot. Like, I could get into it, but the real like, to me, not that any one part is more valuable. It just depends on how I think
where
a person,
you are and what you're doing right now. Yeah.
and like, how does your resistance show up, right? Like, what point does it show up? Mine is like at all points and loudly. But for me, the real standout piece was, and I don't think I could have gotten there without the initial pieces, that like the why, answering all those whys. But you probably remember, maybe I had some resistance to the outline because I had like an outline that I was really married to, and it was awful. Like, it was just the most confusing way to write a book ever. And then there was like that one fine day where we just got really clear. And you amazingly did not gloat.
Nope.
And just sat there patiently while I did what we could have done months and months before. But yeah,
So,
the clarity of it, like, there's no part in the book that's a mystery to write.
No. And that's so liberating, isn't it? It's so freeing.
Totally. It takes a lot of the, I mean, this is of course the stuff I teach because we all teach best what we most need to learn, but like, breaking it down, on the one hand, like, at least me, some of the resistance is, I think, what creative people probably have, which is like, no, I don't want to be boxed in. Like, no, I must be free so that the creative muse can come and visit. And it's like, well, actually, she's going to show up more if you give her a door to knock on, right? Like, build that container, and then it's actually a lot easier. So, yeah, so I imagine for the people taking that course, like, that's the true gold.
Yeah.
Is that you'll walk away with that thing. Whatever you do with it after that is totally up to you. But like, that's a huge waymaker, I think.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that what you said, like that door to knock on. So when you create the book plan and it's very detailed, you have just created like a million doors for her to knock on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not even just one. It's like you've created like so many different doors. And so if you open one door that's, you know, this part of your book that you're writing, and you're like, She didn't come today. She didn't come to this door. Okay, no problem. Let's look over. Oh, I think she's there. I think she's behind that door.
Right.
Let's go over there. Oh, look, she's here. I'm going to write. Look at that. So you just give so much more opportunities. And the other thing that I think people get stuck on is, this is my outline. This is how it's going to be. It's still an Agile document. So, like, this is your target. And if you get in there, it's also really easy to see what's missing once you have a target. So, oh, I thought that this is what it was, but I forgot this big part. No problem. Just add it. That's no big deal. Or I put this here, but it's really not here. It's something, it's somewhere else. Or maybe it's not even in the book anymore. Once I wrote this part, I thought, oh, I don't need that it's contradictory or whatever it is.
Or like there was a part in mine in the second section of the book where I just noticed, first of all, they're like the world's longest chapters, but I noticed that I was saying the same thing in every chapter. It was relevant to every chapter. So I was basically like recreating the wheel 12 times for each of these chapters. And then there was that moment where we kind of were able to sit back and look and go, okay, hang on, like that's just annoying. It's not only annoying to write, but it's going to be annoying to read.
Right.
And so there's like that opportunity to go, oh, like, hang on, this doesn't need to be
in every chapter.
It's in every chapter. It needs to be its own chapter.
Yeah.
Right here, and then it's one and done, and you can walk away. But like without that outline, you really can't do that. Yeah. And the other piece too, I think, like in addition, the clearer the outline is, to the point that like, I mean, as we both know, it gets to the point where you're like, if you're like me and you're an overwriter, I am not an underwriter, I'm an overwriter, then it's like, no, you only speak to the bullet points. Mm-hmm. Do not wax lyrical here. Like you don't have, just stop, because there's no shortage of words apparently that I'll use. But so to like really follow it to the outline, to the terms of the outline, will also probably stop you from whatever your bad habit is in writing, like whether you under express or over express, or whether you repeat yourself or whatever. Like if you really follow the outline, then it actually doesn't matter which door the muse knocks on. Because who was it, Hemingway or Mark Twain? I can't remember. It was like Hemingway, Mark Twain, or like someone else, some famous dude from 100 years ago, who's like, basically, I only work when inspiration strikes. Like, fortunately, luckily she strikes every morning at like 9 a.m.
Yeah. I don't remember who said that, but yes, that is.
It's like, I think it's like Edison, like one of those people. But so it's kind of like it doesn't actually matter what you feel about it, because you're just writing to the outline. Like you don't need to be flamboyantly in love. And you and I recently talked about how like often when I am sharing an article that I'm like, this is the most amazing thing I've written, I'm probably going to be famous tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Right. And then crickets. Mm-hmm. And then other times I'm writing something and it's got to go out because I've created a structure, kind of like the outline, right? Like it's going to go out. And sometimes I'm like, this is self-indulgent at best. Like I don't love it, but I kind of got to put it out because I'm on a deadline. And then people will just really enjoy it. And I almost think that sometimes those pieces, because you're not as attached to them, right? I was just writing to the concept that I had, which is the essence of writing to the outline. Like, it doesn't matter if you're in love with this idea, just get that piece out. You're going to edit it and you'll have time to make it, paint the walls a different color if you want then.
And I think, that's a really important point too. When you sit down to write, if you don't have an outline, you have a tricky brain and it's going to go all over.
Yeah.
And one of the places it goes is to judgment. Is this good? Is this bad? Is this what? Is this, up, down, right, left, whatever? And if you have an outline, you have a focus. You have something for that monkey mind to do. Oh, I'm going to write here. Yeah. And so it helps with that judgment piece in that you know what you're going to do. You don't have like, oh, let me think about what I want to write. Oh, and then let me think about, is this really even any good? And is anyone going to read this? And so it takes that part away a little bit and gives you what you need to do, which is just write at that point.
Yeah.
So I also think the other piece that you were talking about, when you have an outline, you know, like, I'm going to go from here to here to here to here. It's a really nice, kind, gentle thing for yourself. Like, I'm helping myself because I know what the path is. I'm helping my reader
Yeah.
because it's a logical flow. When you don't have it, a lot of people have a tendency to do what I call like circular writing. So this thing connects to this thing, and that connects to that, and that connects to that, and that connects to that, and this connects to that, and oh, this connects to that, and then
Yeah.
I'm over here and I have no idea how I got there, and it doesn't relate at all to my main point. So
Right.
it's super helpful to have that plan. And then if you have an idea that comes in that you're writing and you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that one thing, I've got to include it, then you know where you need to put it because you've got a plan in front of you.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you're worried like, oh, like having a plan is going to constrict my creativity. It's like, well, no, because the plan will just, like you said, that's actually what I was going to say earlier. We like finish each other's sandwiches.
Yeah.
Um, like one, if your outline has been like made to be a sturdy and clear document, then you already know where that goes. And if you were to come up with an idea that doesn't belong in anything that you've clearly put out, then either it doesn't go in that book,
Right.
or there's actually something missing, or maybe it's a foreword, or maybe like the dust jacket. I don't
But
know,
it's
but
easier to see what it is, even like
yeah,
there's like less question about, like, when you get to that point, like, oh my gosh, this isn't here, you have like two paths in front of you, include it or not include it.
yeah,
And so it's easy to see, like, all right, let me think about this. Is this part of the book? 100%. Is
yeah,
this part of the book? I'm not sure.
yeah.
Okay, then let's go down that path a little bit. It's much easier to make those decisions, and it becomes so much less cluttered in your mind too. Like, you don't have a lot of energy, like wasted energy happening around that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's so partly, I think that's, I mean, it's always the case, right? Like it's part of your magic, Heather, but it's also like, it's like the simple, easy thing. And we should all be able to do it for ourselves, but you won't. Like you won't do it. Like
And
very few
it does sound
people.
easy. It sounds like, of course, absolutely.
Yeah. But like doing that alone. And I know because I think I was trying to write that book for about a year before you and I started working together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and by trying to write the book, I think we mostly know I wasn't. Or like I was like writing the reason why, but not like not the way that you provide it, which is clear. I was literally writing the reason why as though that were the book.
Right.
Which is kind of like how I feel when you sign up for those webinars and then they like the whole webinar, they're explaining to you why the webinar is so good. I'm like, I'm already here. Like you can now, we could actually have the webinar and that's just annoying. So, but that piece of like having someone there to like remind you, like, well, you're making this really confusing, or like, no, just really, really simple, and like someone who you're accountable to that's outside of you, right? And
Well, and even some of our conversations that we've had, you've started something with, what I really want to say here is blah 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 blah, and then I just say, then you should say blah 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 blah.
that's probably the thing. It can't be that easy.
But sometimes it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes it isn't, but sometimes it is.
Yeah. The planning parts, my friend the squirrel is back. I was hoping he was
Oh,
okay. It
yeah.
rained. I imagine he was hiding. Um, that's like, yeah, again, it's this stuff that you will cut corners on because you want to get to the sexier act of writing the book. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, yeah, it won't work. You won't do it.
Well, and I think that goes to kind of what you were saying when you said I was working on it for a long time before. Like you said, even at the beginning, people rarely say, I'm going to write a book and then start right then.
Right.
That's a decision that people weigh in their minds for a long time. And they go back and forth on it. Should I write a book? I don't know. I think it would be good. I don't know. And so and it starts like, just as a little maybe whisper, and then we like shoo it off, and then it comes back and all the things.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that happens before you get to even like the final decision. Yes, I'm going to write a book. So by the time you're there, most people are like, let's go. Like you've made
Yeah.
the decision. So I'm just going to sprint now, but it's
Yeah.
not a sprint. It's a marathon.
Well, and
and
that's
you
the thing,
and
right?
so
Like
and
it's
you
a
can't you
process.
have to train in order to be able to sustain being able to do that. A book
Yeah.
is not 3 pages. It's not the blog that you wrote the other day.
Yeah.
It's it's a bigger piece of connected writing that takes thought and planning, and um, also a lot of self-care. You have to
Mhm.
have those self-compassionate practices in place in order to to be ready for the long haul. You just do.
Yeah.
um
Yeah. Like you're like I don't know a person who I actually think I'm a good writer. I
you
actually
are.
genuinely think I'm a good writer. But
You
there's
are.
still the part of me that's like, that's not very good. Like even though I think and
Right.
I feel confident saying like actually I know I'm a good writer. I worked as a writer for 15 years, have a degree in it, all these things, lots of accolades. So I can know all that, but I'm still writing and part of me is like, that's not very good. That's not good enough. You're not a good writer. And so it's like if that's for someone who won every English award in school,
Right. Yeah.
scholarships, like that's so, and that voice is still there for me. So I think there's far more people who are probably the last time they did any significant writing might have been high school or college, and maybe they
Hmm.
struggled with it, or maybe they don't feel like they're a good writer. And so, if you ask yourself the question, like, do I want to write a book? Like, well, that's onerous. The more interesting question, and I think going back, because I was reviewing actually the like practices that we did at the beginning, it's really like,
Yeah.
do you have a story to tell? Like, and
Yeah.
why? Like, no one needs to hear about my grocery trip yesterday. Nothing interesting happened.
Hmm.
But if you get like really clear, like, what is the story I want to tell, and you really focus on that, and that's again, the outline helps you with those pieces, then because writing a book is, as you've said many times, and I'm like, no, it's fine. It's really hard.
It is.
And it strikes me too, like, there's like so many books back, like, well, I mean, they're happening now too, because publishing has made it easier in some ways, like self-publishing for people to
Hmm.
just write a book. And there's
Hmm.
lots of books that aren't very good.
Hmm.
But even if you go back to like Victorian era writing, there's so many books. I'm like, why did this person write? Like, this is not remotely interesting.
Hmm.
Like, not everyone's Jane Austen.
Right.
So, and not to say that you have to be Jane Austen, but I think some of these people were just like, I'm going to write a book, and that was their sole purpose. And it wasn't like, why am I writing a book? What is the story that I'm telling? Who is listening to it? And how would I plan this such that it actually lends itself to being read as opposed to being just
A
wordy
collection
prose
of
that,
words. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like, so I think that's the other thing. Like, people, I think, um, that's so funny. I think people overestimate their their ability to write a book and then also underestimate it at the same time.
Because to be fair, it's not something that people do all the time. So like
Yeah.
they just have an assumption like that doesn't look too hard. I could do that. And so because they've never done it, they have no frame of reference. The only frame of reference they would have is I write a blog, so I can do that.
Right.
And most likely you can if you put in the work, absolutely. But it
Yeah.
isn't just, like snap my fingers and it's done.
Yeah.
It does, and it's a layered process. It's
Yeah.
so layered. I think that is a misconception. Like I write it and that's it. No,
Yeah.
no, no, that's your first draft. And
Yeah.
as and it's probably going to be crappy. It's gonna,
Yeah.
like, and that's okay. It should be.
Yeah.
And then we go in for the next layer, and we go in for the next layer, and there might be places that are super layered. Those
Right.
like those might be like really challenging parts that you go over again and again and again and again. And then there are could be other parts that is like, whoo, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Like there might be some parts that are just a one draft piece, but most of it isn't.
Yeah.
um and that's how the writing process goes, because you have to have some separation from it
Yeah.
in order to see it. And I think that people forget that. But during all that, I mean, like, even though it's a layered process, even though it's difficult, that means like all the more, like, you don't need to make it harder on yourself than you need to be. And I think that's why that, the kind of the myth of the tortured writer has
Yeah.
come true for so many people, because they're so committed to, like, I've got to be in pain to be doing this. You don't actually. If
Yeah.
you create these foundational practices, it's still going to be hard, but it doesn't have to be tortured.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to let people know, and to help them through that. Like, we can make this a more enjoyable process
Yeah.
by doing these things. We can, like, help you to get into the flow of writing and
Yeah.
feel so energized that you don't want to even stop. We
Yeah.
can get you to that place, and not every writing session is going to be like that, but you'll have more of them like that if
Yeah.
you do these things.
Yeah. It's kind of like learning how to do squats the right way. Like
Yeah, that's
if
such a good example.
you don't do that, you could literally harm yourself, right? And then you're
Yeah,
not going to
really
do it
bad.
anymore.
Yeah,
And
like, you never
like,
do it again.
totally, like, why would you? Oh, I like blew out my knee. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I bet you did.
yeah.
And like, it's, to me, it's like it is not easy to write a book, but like, it's a hard thing to do. Like, let's just agree that writing a book
Mhm.
is hard. Even if you write a shitty book, it's hard,
Yeah,
right?
it's a lot of time.
Like,
It's a lot of
yeah,
commitment.
kudos on
Yeah.
doing a lot of really hard work,
Mhm.
and ideally you don't want to write a bad book. But so it's like, just because it's hard doesn't mean, like, the added suffering of your soul doesn't make a hard thing easier, right?
No.
And so
In fact, guess what? It makes it harder.
it makes it a lot harder. This is why most people don't write books.
Yeah.
And and to be fair, I think a lot of us in general, like the starving artist, like, we're
Mhm.
used to seeing people suffer for their art, and we know those stories really well. And like,
Mhm.
what was it, Hemingway, like, write long and hard about what hurts. Like, I'll just go sit in my cabin and drink myself to, like, we don't
Mhm.
have the best models always for it.
Right.
And
So
so
we
it's
need to
like
create new
a
ones.
new one. Yeah. And I think too, like, it's reminding me of, do you guys have any, I know you've seen them, like, giant murals, right, on like the side of a building?
Yeah.
For some reason, we have a lot of them here, and they're not all great. There's one with bears that every time Adam and I are like, are they bears or people? They're like, bear people. What are they? It's
People
creepy.
bears.
But people bears, human bears. But it always strikes me, it's kind of like with a story like Harry Potter, where I'm like, how did she do that?
Mhm.
How, even throughout an entire degree in writing, I'm like, I don't understand how, like, C.S. Lewis
Yeah.
started here and ended here and did all that in the middle. Like, I still don't know, and I don't know if I ever will, and that's okay.
Mhm.
But to me, it's kind of like you're painting like a huge mural on the side of a building, right? And you could just get up on your scaffolding every day and do the little bit at a time, and like cross your fingers that when you get to the other side of the wall, like, it's worked out and the perspective's right. But it probably wouldn't be. Like,
Mhm.
if you were just like, okay, I draw this part here and this part here, like, it's probably not going to work. And so, like, really what we're talking about is like having somebody help you get the, like, altitude and distance from it, so that you can go, okay, so trees should not be this big here and then people this big here, because that's going to be weird. And sort of sketch it out so that when you do go in to do your painting, you know what you're doing. You know it's actually serving the rest of it. Like, that when all is said and done, you can step back and be like, great, this makes sense. And the parts
Yeah.
go together.
And when you do sketch it out like that, you're able to see, like, oh, I need something here, right here, that, like, just
Yeah.
shines more, because I know all the other things that are going on. So what is that thing right here that I need to include? Um,
Right.
Sunbeam or whatever it is, it doesn't matter.
Right.
But
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's like again, you're already doing something hard. So why wouldn't you do what you could to make the hard thing easier? Right.
right, because we have a bias for the hard, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean we can't change. And
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
because it'll still be hard. It's okay. You don't have to worry
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't worry. Squats are hard. They're always, even if you're doing them right, they're hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Plus, I think, I've done a lot of writing in groups, because, like, in school, there were
Mhm.
workshopping classes and stuff like that. And my experience with you has been one-on-one. But I do think that there's also, like, kind of a fun camaraderie of having, like, being in that place with a bunch of other people
Mhm.
too, like that, like having the space to, like, throw ideas around.
Well, and also know that okay, so I'm having this block or resistance around this thing. Oh, you are? I am too. Ah, okay. Oh, that makes me feel better. I'm not alone right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So that is the another piece of that support and community to remind, because writing is an isolated
Yeah.
experience. I mean, you have to be in your head. Oh, and there's lots that goes on in that head, right?
Yeah.
So
Better and for worse.
yeah, so having a class setting like this, a group setting like this, it really does remind you every time, oh, right, I'm not alone in this. I mean, these are normal, typical things that every person goes through.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's really helpful. And this course, I've taught this before, but I'm adding a component this time where, so there's 2 classes a week. One is the teaching class, and there will be some live coaching in that. But then the second class is, and there will be a lot of experiential practices and a lot of sharing. You will be doing things in the class,
Right.
in that first class. But in the second one, that is an open Q&A and coaching call.
Right.
So that's your time to be like, hey, I want some help on my outline, or I want
Yeah.
some help with this particular block or resistance that I'm experiencing. So it gives you a lot more one-on-one time.
Right.
And obviously when you're watching someone being coached, that's really helpful too, because you can always, put yourself in that position, because I guarantee somebody's having a problem with it, other
Yeah.
people are having problems with it too.
Or you will next week.
Right. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
you can be like, oh, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now because I just
Yeah.
had that the other day.
Or sometimes just hearing where other people are, what's that like, like if we all took our troubles and put them in a pile, we would look around at them all and be like, I'll just take mine back, right? Like, and sometimes even just hearing someone else's struggle kind of gets you out of your own wagon rut long enough to be like, oh, hang on, my thing is not that big of a problem. Like,
Mhm.
oh,
Or
okay.
yeah, that solution for her, it's not exactly my solution, but it made me think of this, and
Yeah.
I think I can deal with this better now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's like a real benefit.
Yeah, so that's added in to the course that I didn't have in previously when I taught it. So I'm really excited about that aspect of it. And then if people even want more one-on-one stuff, I'm offering, like packages of 4
Yeah.
coaching sessions on top of that. So whatever your need level is,
Yeah.
you can be sure to receive what you need.
Yeah. Oh, that's a thing. The sun has decided to make its appearance today, directly in my eyeballs. Yeah. Ah. The other thing I kind of want to point to, because it's actually how we started with me, is if people are like, oh, well, I've already done a bunch. I've already written a bunch, so this
Mhm.
isn't for me. No, 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 it totally is actually. Like I had written the world's most onerous outline of a book. It may, like in hindsight, I still have that notebook, and sometimes I look at it, I'm like, how did I think I was ever going to put that together? Like that is insane. And so like it wouldn't matter if your book or whatever you want to be writing is simply an idea yet, or like
Right.
if you've actually put in a lot of work, like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter where in the process of writing you are. I think that this, like kind of taking the time out to go, okay, I'm going to go back to this foundational piece, will literally only help you. It will only make your book better, or whatever it is you're writing, as well as your experience of it. So like it's
Mhm.
not just for people who might maybe want to write a book sometime and haven't gotten anywhere. Like I don't think, I mean,
Yeah.
my world was ballet, right? So if you're an advanced dancer, you could be a snot about it and be like, I'm not taking a beginner class. Or you could like get over yourself and go take that class. And it will be way more like you'll be working harder, you'll be paying attention to more. Like it's just actually the willingness to go back to the foundation is
Mhm.
only going to strengthen you in wherever you are on that journey.
Yeah. To speak to that, I recently had a person in this class who she had written the first draft already, and she'd been working on it for over a year. And she took my class and said, and now I've changed some things, and it's different than what I thought it was going to be, and it's so much better and more where I want it to be now.
Yeah.
Because when she started it, she was at a different place. And so what she thought was going to be, what she wanted to convey to her readers isn't where it wasn't aligned to where she is now. And
Yeah.
so that's important to remember too. Like sometimes when you start something, you're like, well, I thought this was the book that I wanted to write, but I've grown so much since I started this project. Sometimes more than a year, sometimes, 2 years, 3 years. I've grown so much since I started this project that this isn't, yes, there's still a big part of this that I'm going to include, but there's some other things that I have to put in here because that's who I am now. And that's what I teach, or that's what I do. That's who I am. So that's important to remember too. Like not dying on that sort of, well, that's how I said I was going to do it a long time ago. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, you can actually pivot, but it's much harder to pivot alone.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, but I've put in all this work, and now if I change it, then I'm admitting defeat or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And also just to do it blindly without the structure and support of someone who can be like, hey, there's a way to do this that makes it like a more graceful process. It's huge. Again, because you don't actually have to suffer as much. Well, or the suffering is optional. The degree of suffering is optional.
The degree of suffering is optional. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I also think like that's the cool part too, like just that you're offering this as a class now. Like I know you've offered it before, but it wasn't in a way that like the average Joe could take that class. Like they had to already, it was like a pretty exclusive offering that you had to already be a part of this other program. So the fact that you're offering it just in general to everyone is huge. Everyone, you should take this, you should do this. Everyone, you should do this.
They told you this is what you need to do.
Honestly, after Bay's experience of writing a book, just trust me, guys. Save yourself a lot of pain and suffering and do it this way.
Aw, thanks.
Yeah. The cool thing too is that you could do it over and over again, like when you offer it again, right? Like it would only just build on where you already are at, which is very cool.
And I do have to say, as you know, once you are like into the process of writing one book, you have all of a sudden like, oh, I got the other idea. Oh, I got the other idea. So I've had, I've had multiple people work with me more than once on like, oh, I'm going to make this a course now, or I'm going to, because you could use it for that too. Or, I have this new idea I'm working on, or whatever it is. So the process works.
Someone could do that, could take the course because they want to either create or refresh their website, right? Like, great, there's an outline to be made and like clarity around what you want to put. There's literally no limit to what you
any writing process that you're doing. I mean, any writing project that you're doing, whether it's a website, a course, a book, like a blog, but you want to do it really intentionally so that maybe you could use it for a book next, later on, because that's a lot easier to do if you're planning from the beginning versus back ending it.
And just even to, again, that the structure around creating the habit of writing is probably, I don't know that's more important, but it's certainly, there are several factors to writing, period, that make it really, historically make it a hard habit for people to take up, because all their stuff gets in the way. Like an infinite number of stories and obstacles will likely show up. And so then people don't. And
then not only that, like, so you got all the head stuff, all the things that are going on your head. And then you have all the other things that come up, like, oh, but there's that meeting. Oh, I have to, do this with my kid, or all these things. And guess what? When you're writing a book, it's hard to see like, oh, well, if I just give up, like, this week, that's not going to be that big a deal. It's not going to be that big a deal if I don't do it today. It's not going to be a big deal if I don't do it tomorrow. And that is true. And when you get out of the habit of writing, it's harder to get back in too.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not like an all or nothing, thing, but
Yeah.
knowing that you are like, no, I'm in this for the long haul. And yes, if I take a break, I know that it's just a little break. And my identity is tied to writing this book. So I'm going to write this book. I am a writer. That's what I'm going to do. It's not, I'm just, maybe I'll do this if I feel like it later.
Yeah. Well, it makes me think of, how many, you would hear it more than I do. And I certainly hear it enough where people like, I hope to be able to write a book one day, or like, I'm like, there's no rule. Like you can do it. Like there's no, like, you don't need membership. Like you can just do it. And so I think a lot of people probably have stories they'd like to tell, whether it's to have a book that's published, or maybe it's just like a book that you share with your family. Like, there's so many, family history or something like that, where how many of those don't ever come into being, and then the story's lost because it's something you'd like to do, but you've never gone past the step of like, I wish one day the writing fairy bopped me on the head. Like there isn't one. If there is, like maybe there is, it's Heather. Yeah. Like, yeah.
Wow. I think the writing fairy bopping on the head is a good place to end, because that's a good image.
Down, is it the same one? Like, down came the writing fairy and she said.
We're not going to go any further than that.
Yeah, we'll stop. But just that.
Yeah, just that.
Write a book.
Write a book.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So if you're interested and you've enjoyed this conversation that Bea and I have been having, these are the types of conversations that I have with my authors all the time. So whether you want to do a course or which is coming up October 6th, and I will put the link in the comments to my website. There's also, one-on-one work too. So, or to add on after the course, who knows what you need, but there you go.
Any of the options are really great. And I was going to say, I can't recommend it enough. Like I'm not saying this because Heather and I worked together once long ago in the past. Like we work together ongoingly. So the value is like, the proof is in the pudding, I think. And soon I'll have a book out and then people can read it. And then we'll just
tasty.
Be like, read this, then go do this.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right.
Thanks for having me, Heather.
Yes. Thanks for coming along, Bea. And I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Have a really good weekend.
You too.
Okay. Bye.